get a U.S. as well as a Filipino, and I'm going to get a Filipino passport. And you know why? Because in a year or so...
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
And this, there's a lot of things that I totally understand would make what I'm about to ask kind of unrealistic on certain levels without some significant changes in the world. But what do you think would be the impact if the Philippines actually considered applying for U.S. statehood? They're already almost a state, right? Because the Filipinos have a unique right in immigration that they can come to the U.S. as much as they like and work, because we have such a good relationship with them after World War II.
Oh yeah, and before that even, because what happened in 1898, there was a brief war with Spain, and what they did, they sunk our battleship, the Maine. Well, what they didn't realize that it was coming after them was Teddy Roosevelt was president at the time, and he had also been a 4-star general in the Army. So he put together a real tough army and kicked the butt of the Spanish. And as a reparation, we got Puerto Rico, we got a lot of islands in the Pacific, and the Philippines. And you know, the Spanish had control of Mexico. We didn't get Mexico, but they had all these possessions, and they used the people. They used them. They worked them hard. They had hard labor. They didn't pay them that good. In the same way in the Philippines. But in 1898, when we beat the Spanish, we got the Philippines, and then that was even before the wars and everything. Well, World War II, that was the one that really hurt them. But we treated them good. We helped them build the country up some, and then in 1942, MacArthur came there, and he didn't have enough force, and he couldn't beat the Japanese out of there. And he said, "I shall return." And in 1944 he did, and he kicked the butt on the Japanese and got them out of there. But they had messed up the country so bad. You know, the whole infrastructure, there was a lot of bombing and stuff. The Japanese had bombed, and the U.S. had to rebuild the whole electrical grid, the infrastructure, roads, and everything. But one of the worst things that ever happened when the Japanese were there, it's pronounced here Bataan, but Bataan Death March. They pronounce it Bataan, and which is the proper way. And they took our prisoners, Americans.
Now, Bataan.
Let me finish real quick.
But point of information.
Yeah.
Now, if I remember correctly, Bataan, which that's actually up by Burma, isn't it?
No, it's in the Philippines. It's pronounced Bataan.
I remember now. Yeah, the Japanese with the Bataan Death March. Yeah,
Bataan and Corregidor were areas of real battles, but Corregidor was in a different area of the islands in the Pacific. But the thing of it is, the Japanese were nasty, really bad. The word is bastos.
I remember now why I thought I was mixing up Bataan, because I was thinking about there was a side thing during World War II that the British were up in Burma at the same time, and they were fighting the Japanese in dense jungles. They had disease issues and all kinds of stuff. It was harsh.
Well, this Bataan Death March, or Bataan, which is the proper pronunciation. Hey man, he didn't hear me. He's got his little ear things on, I think. You can't get through on that. But anyway, they marched the prisoners about 70 miles through jungle. They didn't give them any water. They didn't give them any food. That was the nasty Japanese at that time. And a lot of men died. And
well, that was a big difference between the philosophical difference of manhood between the Japanese and the Western people at the time. The Japanese figured if you gave up in a fight, even to the point of death, then you just weren't worthy of any respect whatsoever anyway. And they would kill their own if they fought in a battle and the other guy tried to surrender, they just kill him anyway.
Yeah, but anyway, this what has happened since then? They were supposed to get the guys that were in that and survived were supposed to get reparations from the U.S. government. They never did. Most of them have passed away by now because they were young men in those days. But now they've passed away, most of them. But our government passed it from one president to another, one administration, and they never got reparations for it. But when MacArthur came back in '44, he kicked their butt. He had a hell of a strong army, and he kicked the Japanese butt. And then, you know what happened? President Truman was the one that he authorized the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. If that wouldn't have happened, why? I'll come by. He comes around that way. He's a pretty decent guy. He watches all the way, man. Hey, man. He's coming over to see us. Hey, I'm always glad to see you. Let me break it, man.
What's happening?
What was your first name again?
Phil.
Phil. This is Darren.
We've been introduced.
Yep.
And Darren.
I'm filming our conversation.
Nice.
Hi there.
This
Go Team Chandler.
This is Phil. He's a good guy, but no, Darren. You know, he's intelligent. You'll be going over to the library, right?
That's a good question. I'm still debating that. Haven't had my coffee or my breakfast yet, and I'm debating going and doing something else.
Sometimes
So I haven't decided yet this morning.
Sometimes Darren will spend 5 hours at a computer. He's very knowledgeable in Muslim things and things like that. But
Well, computers aren't the only place to learn stuff. I learned most of the things I really value in machine shops and fabrication places and factories, but now I don't get to pretty much own anything that I can't carry, and tools are heavy. So
tell him about your
So now I
experience
study.
in Alaska working with the crabbing and all.
now, what was that?
Oh, we go way back, buddy.
Yeah.
I know all about the Alaska trip.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, you know he got.
I did 12 years up there.
One time he got bitten or pinched in the ass.
I got pinched
by a
in
Dungeon-
on the meat of my hand,
then
and
your butt.
then I kind of leaned over a little bit, or no, it was I got pinched in the butt first, and then I was like freaking out about that and put my hand out and got pinched in the hand, and I was smashing it against the hollow metal walls
That
of
was
the
a Dungeness
tank.
crab, right?
Dungeness crab. That is awesome food.
Oh, heck
And
yeah,
and
it is.
right after that point, I had no problem butchering them things. Neat, neat, neat.
Bites you real bad.
Oh, they'll damn near take a finger off, right?
They can bite as hard as a human,
Oh,
and they're only this big. I mean, they're just
Hey.
like.
for the record, it's extremely difficult to bite a finger off.
Oh man.
Damn near impossible.
But Phil likes the same music I do, and man, I'll tell you what.
How do you know that in person?
We listened to it.
We've talked.
The biting of the finger thing.
Oh.
It's a long story. As you say, I look like I got put in a bag with a mongoose, and his finger looked like a chicken wing when I was done with it.
Hey, good to see you, man.
All right, guys.
Oh, all right. Now, don't record this, okay? Shut it off a minute. I want to say something.
Well, if you got something to say to me, then I'm going to record it. So
Well,
I don't like private conversations anymore. Why do you think I record everything?
no, but what I was going to say is, only you have control of your destiny.
That's not entirely true. You lock a guy in a prison, and then the guy that has the key is the person that controls much of that person's fate. And that thing that you just told me is a logical fallacy that the people who own the key often use against those who have lost their control over their fate.
Well,
That's the dilemma and the fallacy that's put on the prisoner. And you look in our society, the kinds of things that people who manipulate society do, it's those same people that often come along and shake their finger at their own victims and say, you're under your control of your fate, and it's a cop-out.
Well, you're a smart guy, very smart. You're a good friend. And,
You know, some people
if
used
I
to
say anything to you like that, it's meant in a good way. You know, you're much stronger than me because I've been in the Army. I've had to be out in the cold weather and in the field and have tents, sleeping on cots, sweating through the sleeping bags, seeing icicles under. I've been through all that stuff. But I have to have a roof over me. You know, I've just been thankful to have that. Even though I'm not very well off right now, I'm working to get better off. And only you yourself can change what happens in your life.
You know, here's the thing. Our lives are interdependent.
Yeah.
You're not a standalone device.
Okay, Darren, that's all I'll tell you.
Here comes the go-kart guy.
Back as
What's
a young
that?
Man.
Say again a what?
So I got in a scuffle years back as a young man,
Okay,
and these guys got me, and I'm thinking they're gonna pulverize me.
sure.
One guy comes behind me, reaches around, and starts scratching my face, scratching with his fingernails. So they got my arms. I did the only thing I could do. I was like a pit bull, and you just hear this, and he yanked it out. So I was, like I said, it was like skinning a chicken wing. The only thing I could do, right?
Yeah. And you're still in good shape. You look good.
Well, I try.
You work out in a gym too, or what?
No, I just work hard every day.
Well, you're a good man.
Work hard and eat right.
Phil-
Live by the golden rule, right?
Phil's a good
You know,
guy.
there's this thing, right? The word work has different connotations depending on context, doesn't it? A physicist will say that work is the physical motion, right? It's if you lift something, if you compress something, if you do something that brings in some kind of Newtonian reaction, then that's considered work. If you talk to a landlord, it's that whatever it takes so that the people that they are dependent on for their standard of living shows up with a piece of paper with numbers on it that the bureaucracy gives the landlord the ability to continue their standard of living. If you talk to somebody who produces goods, it's working for an organization, for somebody, right? That you go and you do whatever they tell you to do, right?
Yep.
Which is actually not that unrelated to slavery. If you look at slavery around the world, the slave is dependent on the slave driver for food, housing, everything.
Yep.
And how is that significantly different than somebody who works for an investor that owns a McDonald's across the street from the apartment complex that, unbeknownst to the McDonald's employee, might just be owned by the same guy?
He's a sharp cat, huh?
Phil, I wanted to ask you a couple things. You know, I come here early because I dropped my wife at Central Gym. You know, she works for 6 hours most days. Sometimes she works 14 hours. That's a long dance on Sunday. And she gets double pay. So she'll have a big paycheck. But I think we got that bonus from the government.
Right now? I'll come back and chit chat with you guys in a little while. All right.